Hi everybody, Casey Lee here, and I'm here to talk about something that has seemed to be affecting people over the last couple of years, so much so that I seem to be finding in sitcoms and shows, and it's finding its way into popular culture, and I'm here to talk about it. I'm here to talk about the misuse of the word literally in the English language. Now, I'm going to go a little bit beyond just criticizing people, as it seems like a lot of people do. A lot of people will criticize other people for misusing the word literally. But they will go no further than that. They won't help people. They won't tell them, this is how you're supposed to use the word literally. And not even that, I had this curiosity about why people misuse it in the first place. And I think I came up with a pretty good theory. I want to share that with you guys. So it's all about the misuse of the word literally. Okay, so let's start with what literally means, and the definition of the word literally and how I understand it. So the word literally, okay, is an adverb. So for English nerds out there, an adverb, you know, it modifies a verb or an adjective or another adverb, right? That's what the word literally does. So when people use the word literally, what they are doing is they're modifying a sentence to tell other people that they mean exactly what they say. Okay, they mean exactly what they say. Now, what does that mean? So, for example, let's say I said I went outside yesterday and I literally ran for 5 miles. Okay, so I'm modifying ran for 5 miles, and what that means is that I went downstairs out of my condo and I took a run, and the distance that I ran was actually 5 miles. Right? That's what the word literally means. It means exactly what I'm saying. Right? Now, I could go even further. I could say something like I went downstairs and I literally ran 2 football fields. Okay, that means I went downstairs, I went to a football field, and I ran the length of 1 football field, and then I ran the length of another football field. Okay, I literally ran 2 football fields. This is what the word literally means. Now, why does it exist? Why do we have this word literally at all? The reason we have it is because the English language and English conversation is scattered with metaphors and common phrases and common sayings and things we use just for exaggeration and emphasis, right? So some people will say, I literally ran 5 football fields, but they don't actually mean it, right? They ran a long time, they ran a long distance, but they didn't actually run 5 football fields, right? There's a lot of common metaphors we'll say, right? I found a diamond in the rough, right? I watched time fly, right? You didn't literally see time as an object and flap its wings and fly, right? You're using all these common metaphors and phrases. So we have all these common metaphors and phrases that we use throughout the English language. Now sometimes you will come across a case where your metaphor or your common phrase or saying actually means what you say, right? So a lot of times people will say things like, I literally ran all day. Okay, I literally ran all day, okay? Well, if you literally ran all day, that means you ran for 24 hours straight, right? All day means 24 hours, right? So a lot of times people will say that, but they really ran maybe 10 hours, maybe like whatever. If they did the Ironman challenge, they might have run 10 hours or whatever, but they didn't literally run all day. Now let's say this rare case that you met this crazy superhuman who's been training like crazy, and he ran literally for 24 hours. He actually ran for 24 hours. Now that would be a case that if you're telling your story to friends, right, you say, oh, he ran all day, they'll probably commonly misinterpret that as just a saying or a metaphor or an exaggeration. They won't actually believe you. So you have to use the word literally to say, no, guys, he literally ran all day. He ran for 24 hours straight. That's where the word literally comes into play. It's like when there's this misconception, or people would confuse it for a metaphor or a figure of speech, you know, this is where you would use the word literally, okay? Now, the effect of this is that you're using the word literally to emphasize realism, to emphasize something that actually happened, okay? So let me talk about the chain of events that happens here, okay? With the use of the word literally. What happens is you tell a story, okay? You tell a story, and people may commonly confuse it with a metaphor or a figure of speech or whatever. So to emphasize the reality of it, to emphasize the actuality of this thing happening, you say literally. So you use the word literally, and then boom, all of a sudden realism and the fact that you mean what you actually say happens, okay? So you have your story, you use the word literally, all of a sudden you have this realism, okay, of the story. Now, the sheer fact that what you're saying is real creates dramatic effect, okay? The fact that what you're talking about, the fact that it's real in the first place, creates dramatic effect, okay? And this chain that happens with the word literally in the English language. Because, again, there's common misconceptions. You say the word literally, and all of a sudden, wow, the fact that he actually means what he says, you know, it leads to this dramatic effect that your story is all of a sudden, wow, this is crazy stuff. Okay, so that's how that's what the word literally means, and that's how you would typically use it. Now, let's talk about the misuse of the word literally. Okay, so I'll go over 3 cases of the misuse of the word literally. The first one being the most common one and the one that I have a theory about. Okay, and the other 2, you know, not so much. I've seen it happen, but they're not, I'd say not as common. Okay, so the biggest place I've seen the word literally misused has to do with this chain. Okay, this chain of tell your story, use the word literally to emphasize realism, and the realism leads to dramatic effect. Okay, so what happens is all these people grow up talking to people in the English language, they hear all these stories, and then they hear the word literally, which causes realism in the story, which leads to dramatic effect, okay? This chain they hear over and over again with people who correctly use the word literally, okay? Now when they do this and they go through life, they start to associate some things in their brain. They start to associate the word literally with dramatic effect. Okay, that's the association that's being made, right? And they forget that this chain is dependent on the fact that the word literally creates realism. They scrap the realism chunk and just have the dramatic the story, use the word literally to emphasize dramatic effect. That's the misuse that happens, okay? So what happens is you tell your friend a story and you say, you know, he literally, I don't know, he literally cooked 1 billion burgers. Okay? Let's say you tell a story first, you say, he cooked 1 billion burgers, okay? And then your friend doesn't react, right? Your friend is just like, yeah, that's great, that's not a really big story. So you use the word literally to emphasize that he cooked a lot of burgers. So you say, no, guys, he literally cooked 1 billion burgers. Now, chances are he didn't literally cook 1 billion burgers. If you counted the burgers, they don't add up to the number 1 billion, right? That's probably physically impossible to cook that many burgers, right? But you as a storyteller are trying to emphasize the fact that he cooked a lot of burgers and people are not reacting to this. So you use the word literally, and this is the most common misuse of the word literally. Okay? The idea that you're using it purely for dramatic effect to emphasize your story, to get a reaction out of people, right? But you have to realize that the reason that works in the correct usage is not because you're just emphasizing the story, is because you're emphasizing the realism. Okay? And the realism, the fact that the story is just real, leads to the dramatic effect. That's the most common misuse of the word literally, and it is my theory that people use this in this way is because they keep associating the word literally with dramatic effect, not really the idea that the word literally leads to realism, and the sheer fact that your story is real leads to dramatic effect. Misuse number 1. Misuse number 2 is kind of a place where people don't really need it. Okay, it's unnecessary use of the word literally. Now, I wouldn't say it's misused. Okay, in a way, it's not incorrect to say it. It's just not really necessary. I remember I had this teacher in university, and she would take you know, copies of pictures in our textbook and put it on her slides. Right? So she could say, yeah, I took this picture from your guys' textbook and put it up on the slide. All right. Now she would say, I literally took this picture from your textbook and put it up on the slide. Now in that case, I don't really think there's no misconception there. I don't think we would figuratively think you did that, or you're using that as a metaphorical phrase. I mean, there's no real use for it there, right? So there's a lot of times where people use the word literally, and there's no need for it because there's no chance of misconception. Remember how I said literally is kind of used because there's a possibility of misconception that you're using a phrase metaphorically or figuratively or whatever, right? That's misuse number 2. Misuse number 3 is for the really picky English people out there, and it's a concept called misplaced modifiers. This is a concept that I learned in high school. Misplaced modifiers is the idea that you're probably using the word literally properly and with the right intention. You just have it in the wrong place in the sentence. There was an example of this in Frasier. There was an episode where a caller called in and said, my mother, I feel like she's lost all motivation, and she literally hangs around the house all day. Okay? Now this could be argued, because what Frasier ended up doing was he criticized and said, well, no. She didn't literally hang around the house all day, because if she did, she'd probably be like a bat or a possum, literally hanging. Alright? Because the word literally comes right before the word hangs, right? Literally hangs around the house all day. So literally hanging doesn't really make sense because she probably doesn't literally hang around the house all day. What the caller probably meant to say was she hung around the house literally all day. So literally modifies all day, and that's potential, right? There are people who lose motivation and they sit in the house all day for 24 hours, right? That you can conceive, right? So the idea is that literally should go with all day rather than hung, because you could have this misconception that someone's literally hanging, right? Now this one's arguable because the English language is ambiguous here, because you could say she literally and then hangs around the house all day. It could be the entire phrase that the word literally is modifying, right? But to avoid any confusion there, you know, English people, English professors and stuff like that will say move the word literally where there's no possible misconception to the word all day. So those are the 3 misuses of the word literally. Hopefully you guys are educated and know how to use it now. If you have any comments, leave them at the bottom of this YouTube video. Hopefully you guys will spread this knowledge and stop criticizing people and enlighten them on how to use the word literally.